Okay, welcome everyone to St. Louis County Library's virtual program, Lit Lovers 2022. We are celebrating National Library Week. So yeah, welcome. And we're so glad that you can join us and support our mission of, encouraging the love of reading. So we are going to be talking about forthcoming books tonight. So books that are going to be released later this spring, summer, and I think we have a couple into the fall. Yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. I do have a few sort of housekeeping activities to take care of before we start the actual meat of the presentation. So tonight's program is in a webinar format, which means that your camera and microphone are not active. So no one can see or hear you, even though you can see and hear us. If you are having trouble hearing us or seeing us, we suggest that you turn up the volume on your device or to leave the webinar and rejoin. That usually helps clear up any issues. We are going to have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So if you could hold your questions until that time, we will open up the chat function at that time and you'll be able to enter your questions into the chat box. So just click on the little icon that looks like a speech bubble with the word chat on it, and a box will pop up where you can enter those questions. That is only going to go to the panelists, so no one else will see your questions. So feel free to ask whatever you like. We also have the live transcription closed captions on. So if you would like to show the captions, hide them, or change their font size, you can do that using the live transcript CC menu in your icon bar. So tonight's presenters are myself. I'm Sarah. I work in adult services, and Harry, who also works in adult services. You've probably seen us before if you've come to one of our other staff picks presentations. We both work in readers advisory, which is like matchmaking between books and readers. And then tonight we're also joined by two very special guests. We have Cindy and Jennifer, who both work in acquisitions. Cindy orders all of the audiovisual material for the library, including all of the audiobooks, like the CD books and playaways. And Jennifer orders all of our adult print collection. So all of the books, the adult books, print books that we have in the library, Jennifer orders them. So they know a lot about books and audiobooks. So we're really excited to have them here with us tonight to tell us about the forthcoming books this year that they're really excited about. So I'm going to go ahead and be the one to get us started. So yeah, so my first pick is Shine Bright, a very personal history of Black women in pop by Danielle Smith, and it comes out later this month on April 19th. If you've come to some of our other staff book pick virtual programs, you may have heard me mention that my favorite book I've read so far in 2022 is the final revival of Opal and Nev by Donnie Walton. And it's like about a fictional 70s rock duo made up of a white British man and an African-American woman. And it's written in the form of an oral history that is so real that you forget it's not. But if you want to know like the real true life stories of all the amazing Black women in pop music history, then definitely put yourself on this book, Shine Bright. Put yourself on the hold list. In fact, the author of Opal and Nev, Donnie Walton, wrote a promotional blurb for this book, and she says that it's, quote, revelatory about the specific experiences of Black women in music, end quote. And Smith really covers the stories of stars such as Mahalia Jackson, Dionne Warwick, Aretha Franklin, Gladys Knight, and Mariah Carey, as well as some of like the lesser known artists like Marilyn McCoo, Denise Williams, and Jody Watley. So if you are a music lover, or you're looking for a new topic to explore in Black history, or you want to know the stories of the women that inspired the character of Opal, then definitely check this book out. Okay, my next pick is the Premonitions Bureau by Sam Knight, and this comes out on May 3rd. This is also a nonfiction book, and it's kind of about the fuzzy line between science and coincidence and the supernatural. So on October 21st in 1966, a coal mine collapse caused a wave of rubble to engulf the town of Aberfan, Wales, and it demolished buildings and it killed 144 people, including many children. It was a national tragedy, and it did eventually lead to increased safety regulations, but that's not the only thing that it's known for. So among the emergency workers that rushed to the scene was a psychiatrist named John Barker. He was a psychiatrist from Shrewsbury, and through his work with the survivors, he became convinced that there had been supernatural warnings about this disaster. And so he teamed up with the Evening Standard newspaper to create what they called the Premonitions Bureau. And this was in like a group that would collect the stories about these warnings. And hundreds of people contributed their stories of like strange feelings and dreams, some of which were very detailed and quite accurately like portrayed this incident. But like Barker, because of this work, was shunned by the professional community. But this only made his commitment to the research stronger. So the author Patrick Raden Keefe, who has a forthcoming book that Harry is going to talk about in just a minute, he blurbed this book, and he called it, quote, an enveloping, unsettling book, gorgeously written and profound. So if you're someone who really likes deep dives into the sort of stranger episodes of history, or investigations into how we collectively and individually explain disaster, then this would be a really great book for you. Okay, so my next pick is When Women Were Dragons by Kelly Barnhill. This is also coming out May 3rd. Kelly Barnhill is a Newbery Award-winning children's book author. I've read her middle grade novel, The Girl Who Drank the Moon, and I really loved it. It's about a little girl who has to come to terms with her own magical power, which has been suppressed like for her own good. It also involves a wise swamp monster, a tiny dragon, and a town in peril. It's a lovely read, even for adults. So given the themes in that book of self-knowledge and self-empowerment, I was not surprised to hear about the premise of this book, which is Barnhill's first novel for adults. It is set in an alternate 1950s America in which thousands of women have spontaneously turned into dragons and started rampaging across the country. This event became known as the mass dragoning of 1955. And at the center of this story is a young girl whose aunt has become a dragon, but whose mother did not, and the fallout that this has created in her life. So, the questions that are on everyone's mind are like, why did only some women change? What caused it? Can anything be done to change them back? And, honestly, I can totally understand this transformation and the urge to just like burn it all down. But this book is like a mashup of fairy tales and Betty Friedan's The Feminine Mystique, and it's sure to be a great book group pick with plenty to discuss. Or it would also be great to just, read for yourself and reflect on how far we have come and how far we still have to go in making society a better place for everyone, women and dragons included. Okay, my next pick is Elektra by Jennifer Saint, and this is also coming out May 3rd. May 3rd must be a big day in the publishing industry. This book tells the story of three women who are well known from Greek mythology, who are all connected to Agamemnon, who was the king of Mycenae. So the first is Clytemnestra, who marries Agamemnon despite the terrible rumors about his family, which do end up being borne out when he betrays her on the eve of the Trojan War. The next is the famed prophet Cassandra, the one who no one believes. And she has a terrible vision of what will happen to her city when Agamemnon's army arrives there. And then finally, there's the title character, Elektra, who is Clytemnestra and Agamemnon's daughter, and who just wants her father to return from the war, but may not be able to escape her family's bloody destiny. And each of these women tells their own story in alternating chapters to build this larger narrative. In their review, Booklist says that it's, quote, electrifying and difficult to put down. It's an emotion-laden story of revenge and rage driven by loss and fills in a gap by giving Clytemnestra a voice, end quote. So there's enough detail that both those who know a lot about mythology and those who just had like a little bit way back in high school should be able to follow along with the story. Now, I absolutely loved Madeline Miller's Circe, and I think this book will really have that same kind of feel. So if you, like me, are a fan of the recent trend of modern retellings of Greek myths, like novelizations of Greek myths, then I think that you should get on the list for this one too. Okay, my next book is This Time Tomorrow by Emma Straub, and this comes out on May 17th. Emma Straub is known for writing these like wise and often funny, realistic relationship fiction about family and friendships, such as the novels We're All Adults Here and The Vacationers. And this one is similar. It's about, kind of relationships, but it's with a twist. It involves time travel. And this is like a new departure for Emma Straub. The main character, Alice, is about to turn 40, and she's like more or less happy with the things in her life, like her job and her relationship and her apartment. But she does have this feeling that something is missing that she can't quite put her finger on. And she's also struggling with her dad's health issues as he ages. And then one morning she wakes up in 1996 in her teenage body. So she's reunited with her old crush. She gets to see her dad young and in good health again. And she's able to relive her past with the perspective of today. But, can she change anything though? And does she really want to? I love a good time travel book, whether it's to the distant past or to our recent own past. I just like contemplating yesterday from the perspective of today. And I also like wondering about what people in the past would think about how we've made their future turn out. So if you like books where the main character has to come to terms with the decisions that their younger selves have made, and what they think about their future selves, like, for example, Rainbow Rowell's Landline or Leanne Moriarty's What Alice Forgot, then I think you might like this one too. And then my final book tonight that I'm gonna sort of highlight for you is The Many Daughters of Afang Moy by Jamie Ford, and this one comes out on August 2nd. So Ford's first novel is Hotel on the Corner of Bitter and Sweet, and this is a book group favorite. It's about post-World War II racism against African or Asian Americans and its effect on a Japanese and Chinese cross-cultural couple. And it's also about a father's attempt to reconnect with his son. So Jamie Ford is of mixed Chinese and European ancestry. And in fact, his name, Ford, his last name, comes from his great-grandfather, Min Chung, who changed his last name to something that sounded kind of more white American when he first immigrated to Nevada in the 1860s. So, the challenges of Asian American immigrants face is very close to Ford's heart, and is a common theme among in his work. And now he's back with another heartfelt novel about the Asian American experience. In this book, a poet who is like struggling with mental health seeks out a very unusual experimental therapy when her young daughter also starts exhibiting the same like dissociative episodes involving memories of their ancestors. And she just doesn't want her daughter to have to go through the same things that she has. So this therapy allows her to reconnect with past generations of her family, and through reliving their stories, she's able to heal like pain and trauma across time. I think that this might be, really a great book for those that loved the unusual experience of time in the Midnight Library or the interconnected generational stories of the Joy Luck Club. This one seems like it would also be another really great book club pick. So yeah, that's my picks for tonight. So up next we have Harry. So go ahead and take it away, Harry.
Thank you, Sarah. So imagine your favorite restaurant. You've been there many times and you've feasted there. And maybe that's what you think of Patrick Radden Keefe. He wrote Say Nothing about the troubles in Northern Ireland and an unsolved murder. And he also wrote Empire of Pain about the Sackler family and oxycodone. So this instead, you go into your favorite restaurant, but now you have a series of small plates, a dozen small plates, each one more spectacular than the last one. That's what this book is. These are a dozen stories from the New Yorker magazine written by this author. They're all very polished. Imagine reading about a man who creates $150,000 vintage wines, which are fakes. So who is he trying to fool? Billionaires. Imagine a Swiss bank whistleblower. Is he a hero or a liar? Imagine the author going to Vietnam with Anthony Bourdain. What was that like? And I should add, if you haven't read Bourdain by Laurie Wooliver, which is an oral history about Anthony Bourdain, I highly recommend it. He really had a very complicated life. Another one of the stories in this book is about an international black market arms dealer who's very cheerful, and how governments were trying to pursue him and take him down. So if you like a nonfiction like book like this that's coming out June 28th, I would highly recommend it. My second book is more on the fantasy side. If you read Exit West by Mohsin Hamid, that book was about people escaping an unnamed foreign country and going through a magic secret door. This book is about Anders, who wakes up one morning and he was white and now he's dark. His skin is dark. He turns to his friend Una. Una is supportive, but what about Anders' parents? What about Una's parents? What about other people who are also turning dark? For some people, this is exhilarating. For other people, it is frightening. I read some advanced reviews of this book on Goodreads, and one review really stuck with me. A man wrote, "I have brown skin. Welcome to my world." So this book has received rave advanced reviews. I think it'll be quite provocative. Hamid writes very long lyrical sentences with lots of description. So again, if this is a book that you want to be thinking about, then I would recommend it. My next book, okay, so this book, you have to realize I moderate one of the two mystery book groups in the library. So of course I'm going to have some mysteries. This one by Megan Golden is like climbing into a Porsche and driving at 150 miles an hour. Liv wakes up in the back of a taxi cab in New York City, and she is all torn up. She's got blood on her. She reaches in her pocket for her phone, and instead there's a blood-stained knife. The cab dumps her at her brownstone in New York. She goes to the front door, and there's somebody living there. And they say, "We don't know who you are. This is not your house." And they slam the door on her. What is going on? It turns out that Liv has a rare form of amnesia, and she really cannot remember what has happened to her in the last 2 years. She remembers what happened to her the last time she was at work. The phone was ringing. So the book is told in alternating viewpoints of Liv, who is trying to reconstruct what happened to her, and a police detective who is investigating a murder. And the title is based on the fact that on Liv's hand is scribbled the words, "Stay awake." Quite a tall order. My next book is Lisa Jewell, The Family Remains. So let's say that previous thriller was too wild for you. You want a twisty psychological thriller like many of my book discussion group members. This book is for you. This is not necessarily a sequel to The Family Jewels Family Home by Lisa Jewell, but it can be read as a standalone. In this book, a woman gets a call from her husband's housekeeper in his house in France, and the woman is sobbing, and the housekeeper tells her, "Your husband has been murdered in the cellar of the home." Well, the police suspect the husband's gangster associates, but the wife doesn't think so. She thinks it's the ex-wife. And this ties back to the first book, but you don't have to have read the first book. So in this book, the wife goes on a vendetta to try to find out if the ex-wife was to blame. And if not, then who? Who did this murder? So Lisa Jewell is a master of psychological suspense. She always involves twisted family relationships and unreliable narrators. I think you'll like this one, which comes out on August 9th. My next book, okay, so now I'm going to give you a romance book because I like to read romances. This is by Allie Hazelwood, who wrote The Love Hypothesis. This is another STEM-related romance. In this book, B is a purple-haired whirlwind, and her motto is, "What would Marie Curie do?" B has been invited by NASA to participate in a neuroengineering project, and she's thrilled to accept, except when she finds out that Levi, who tormented her in graduate school, is going to be her associate. So as you can see from the cover, they have sort of a twisted relationship. You can expect a lot of snappy dialogue. And as a plus, Rocchio, who is a graduate assistant from their times in graduate school, is also involved and has some choice things to say to both of them. So I expect this to be a rollicking, snarky romance book. Yes, it'll have a happy ending, but during a pandemic, don't you want to read a romance once in a while? So I would highly recommend this. The Love Hypothesis was a lot of fun. Comes out in August 23rd. My next book, this is my final book. So I had to save the best for last. And of course, this is a new Jodi Picoult book. And if you go on Goodreads, people are hyperventilating about this book, that they've read advanced copies of it. And this is supposedly a hearkening back to Jodi Picoult's glory days when she was writing courtroom dramas that revolved around a moral issue. In this case, two women are fleeing abused marriages. They both get divorced and they move to a small town in New Hampshire. One woman is raising bees, another woman is a forest ranger. They become friends. So do their children. Their high school senior children, Asher and Lily, become very close. But then what happens? Lily's found dead. And who is blamed for the murder? Poor Asher is blamed for the murder. I'm not spoiling anything. You can only imagine. This is a Jodi Picoult book. There's going to be a major twist at the end of the book. There's going to be a lengthy trial, and there will be a moral dilemma surrounding identity. Notice that Jodi has a co-author on this book. What I have read in the reviews is that the book is seamlessly written. She is at the peak of her form, and they're saying this is going to be a huge bestseller. If you can't wait for this book and you want another book similar to this, read The Good Son by Jacqueline Machard, Mitchard. In that book, a son is found guilty and sent to prison for murdering his girlfriend. The family of the dead girl cause all kinds of grief for the boy's mother and his family. I won't spoil it, but that book has some major twists in it, and it also involves a moral issue. So if you can't wait for the Jodi Picoult book, I would recommend The Good Son by Jacqueline Machard. I will turn it over to Cindy, who also has some outstanding picks.
It's better when I don't have the mute button on. Thanks very much. My first book is Here Goes Nothing by Steve Tolles. This is one of those like crazy over the top acerbic humor kind of books. So if you enjoy the work of like Christopher Moore or Tim Robbins or Carl Hiaasen, this is probably going to be up your alley. It is narrated by a dead man, a la Sunset Boulevard, and I'm just going to give you a little taste from the prologue of how it sounds. Nobody was ever thinking about me. Now that I'm dead, I dwell on this kind of thing a lot. How I often made life choices to avoid the disapproval of those who hadn't even noticed me standing there. How I longed to be liked by people I disliked in case finding me objectionable was contagious. So that's, like I said, just from the prologue of Here Goes Nothing. Apparently throughout the book, while the main character is dealing with how he became a dead man, he always also talks about the bureaucracy that makes up the afterlife. So very much kind of like Defending Your Life, the movie with Meryl Streep and Albert Brooks. I think it's a good time. My next book is called And by Fire by Evie Hawtrey. It's coming out May 10th. Full disclosure, I am a sucker for dual narratives, and this is one of those. So this has two stories taking place with centuries in between them. Both of them are mysteries. Both of them have to do with fire. The first part has to do with, it takes place during the reign of Charles II. One of his queen's ladies in waiting is having an illicit affair with his fireworks maker, and they're investigating the disappearance of a bookseller in London, and it ends up being part of a nefarious plot that has to do with the Great Fire of London. Now that part, apparently historians think that it really was accidental, so remember, this is fiction. Meanwhile, back in contemporary times, Detective Inspector Nigella Parker, who specializes in arson, is brought in to go over these suspicious murders, starting with a body that's found burned at the bottom, at the foot of a statue of Christopher Wren, who of course was an architect during Charles II's reign. And she's partnered with a former lover because, you know, that's always awkward. But she is brought in because she is an arson specialist, and so much so that the Metropolitan Police Department that she works for calls her the Moth. That's her nickname because she's always dealing with the flames. One of the things that attracted me to this book, in addition to the fact it's a dual narrative, is one of the reviews said one of the main clues is that an antique nail is pulled from the body of a dead man. And just like that, I was hooked. So if that sounds like your kind of book, you might consider And by Fire by Evie Hawtrey. My next pick is definitely on the lighter side. It's called The Perfect Crimes of Marion Hayes. It is by Cat Sebastian. This is a sequel to Cat Sebastian's last book, which was called The Queer Principles of Kit Webb. It can stand alone, but just to kind of give you an idea of the kind of wacky, fun hijinks that Cat Sebastian writes about. In the initial book, The Queer Principles of Kit Webb, you had your main character, Percy, who was a fop and a dandy, but he needed to steal something that had been his mother's that had been given to someone else after she passed away. So he ends up hiring a former highwayman who was injured and so is no longer robbing people to teach him how to rob, to get back that piece of material from his mother. And then the two men end up falling in love, and it is just laugh out loud funny. My only problem with that, I listened to it in audio, I thought it was spectacular. My only problem with that book was I didn't think they gave enough attention to this major character, Marion Hayes, who happens to be Percy's best friend and who was forced into marriage to his repulsive father, who's twice her age and just a very vile person. But maybe this is why, because she was going to get a book of her own. So at the end of the first book, and this isn't really a spoiler, she's kind of on the run. And she realizes that being, you know, minor nobility and having gone to all these finishing schools, she doesn't really have a lot of experience in living life on the lam. So she basically gets suggestions from the only person that she thinks might understand her situation, and that is the person who's been blackmailing her for a couple of years. The blackmailer has always been pretty empathetic to her situation and apologizes for having to blackmail her, but it's the only way he can make money. And as the blackmail letters continue on and their conversation via letters carries on, it becomes more and more amorous. And so he is the one who helps her out of her current situation. This is really kind of like it's just like a caper. It's very fun, not anything heavy, but if that sounds like it's a good time to you, then I highly recommend this, The Perfect Crimes of Marion Hayes. I hope it comes out in audio like the other one did. My next pick is a lot heavier. It's called The Last to Vanish by Megan Miranda. Many of you who are big thriller fans are probably already familiar with Miranda's work. She writes very taut, lean, twisty thrillers. This one is very much along the same lines. Her protagonist is a woman by the name of Abigail. Abigail has moved to a small town in North Carolina. She really loves it there. She's been there for about 10 years. She works at the local resort called the Passage Inn. And she really loves it. This is a place of lots of natural beauty. There's a waterfall. It's very close to the Appalachian Trail. You know, there's hiking and canoeing. Unfortunately, there is also a series of missing persons cases that go unsolved. And so at the beginning of the book, a journalist comes to write stories about all these people who have vanished and then ends up vanishing himself. So the journalist's brother comes to try to see if he can find the journalist, and he ends up hooking up with Abigail, and only to find out, or she finds out, that really the town kind of closes ranks on her, and she is really still considered an outsider. All those people who she thought were friends that she could trust suddenly don't want to have anything to do with her or the investigation. I really love the way Megan Miranda writes. She's the quintessential thriller writer. She has sharp, short sentences, very staccato in delivery. I like to think of it as stream of consciousness of a person staring down a loaded gun. So if you're into those kind of thrillers, I highly recommend Last to Vanish by Megan Miranda. My next pick is called Shudder by Ramona Emerson. And this is a debut novel, so I really don't know much about Ramona Emerson's writing style, but I'm very excited about this book. So Emerson is part of the Navajo Nation. So she's a Native American, and her main character is as well. Her character, Rita Todashene, is a forensic photographer for the Albuquerque Police Department. And the police really love Rita's work because a lot of times her photos actually contain clues that help them figure out who the perpetrator of the crime is. Now, what they don't know, and what Rita does know, is the fact that she sees dead people. So the ghosts of the people that she's taking pictures of often talk to her. They latch onto her and won't let go. And so that's the reason she is able to photograph things that do lead to clues to try to help find out these perpetrators. However, if you're familiar at all with Navajo culture, you'll know that ghosts are not, Casper, the friendly ghost kind. They're known as skinwalkers. They are portents of evil. They're not just mischievous, they are actually dangerous. And so Rita, trying to protect the people that she cares about most, having these problems with all these hauntings, she actually separates herself from the grandmother who raised her on the Navajo Nation, and she isolates herself from all her friends. Unfortunately, she's taking photos for the police of an alleged suicide, and the ghosts from that suicide latches onto her and says, oh no, it was murder, and you have to convince everybody of that and help solve the crime. If you are a fan of the Leaphorn She mysteries written by Tony Hillerman, I just devoured those. I love those mysteries. This is very much along the same lines, where it mixes the Diné culture along with crime. Also, if you enjoy that, the Native American aspect along with a thriller, I cannot recommend enough The Firekeeper's Daughter that came out just recently by Angeline Boulet. It's not the Navajo Indians. It actually takes place with the Anishinaabe up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, but that is a spectacular book, and I highly recommend it in audio. And then also, if you enjoy like the supernatural aspect with using Native American myths, I also recommend Rebecca Roanhorse's books, Trail of Lightning and Storm of Locusts, which just blew me away. All right. And my last book, a little bit lighter than those, is called Other Birds by Sarah Addison Allen. A lot of you are probably already familiar with Addison Allen's work. She wrote Garden Secrets and The Sugar Queen, both of which are terrific in audio once again. For me, Addison Allen is the mistress of magical realism. And this is definitely one of those sorts of books. Addison Allen often uses the themes of redemption and forgiveness, and this is more of the same. So her main character, Zoe, goes to Milo Island, which is just off the coast of South Carolina, and she's going there to clean out the apartment of her mother who just passed away. This is a very unusual apartment house. It's horseshoe shaped, it's turquoise in color, and it has an odd, motley assortment of people living there. A girl on the run, a couple of estranged sisters, a lonely chef, a famous author, and 3 ghosts. So if you like that sort of thing, I think that you'll really enjoy this. She's kind of the antithesis of Megan Miranda's writing style. She has very lush descriptions. Her characters are always very multi-layered, have lots of deeply described emotions. And I love her vocabulary because you can just kind of like, savor it on your tongue like hard candy. If you like magical realism, I actually highly recommend another book called Bayou Magic that came out about 5 or 6 years ago by Jewell Parker Rhodes. It is also really beautifully written. Thank you. And next up is Jennifer.
Thanks, Cindy. Okay, I'm going to start right in with the celebrity gossip. I want to make sure that we don't get too highbrow or academic. So my first book is The Palace Papers, Inside the House of Windsor, The Truth and the Turmoil by Tina Brown, and it comes out April 26th. Tina Brown is the former editor of Vanity Fair and The New Yorker, and she's also a longtime observer of the royal family. In 2007, 10 years after Princess Diana died, Brown wrote the Diana Chronicles, and it was an extensive biography. And she wrote not only about Diana's life, but about what her life and death meant in the history of the royal family. One of her conclusions was that the Queen and the whole family had stoically survived all of the turmoil and scandal of those years, and then they resolved to carefully avoid the kind of publicity that had proved so troublesome. Well, even if you do not follow the royal family and you can't name one member of the family, you probably know that that isn't the way things have been working out for them. So Brown is back with a recap of all that's happened in the last 25 years. She writes about the Queen grieving the loss of her sister, Princess Margaret, her mother, and her husband of 73 years. She investigates the sometimes tense relationship between William and Harry, the public disgrace of Prince Andrew, and Harry and Meghan's decision to officially step back from royal family duties. The negative and positive publicity the family has received in recent years reveals a whole new set of challenges. Brown calls this book a family survival story, and it promises to be both juicy and informative. Okay, my next book is The Emma Project by Sonali Dev, and it comes out May 17th. We readers can't seem to get enough of contemporary novels inspired by Jane Austen. This book is the latest in a series from Sonali Dev, which gives an Indian-American twist to the classic Austen books. In addition to the Emma Project, this series includes Recipe for Persuasion, Pride, Prejudice, and Other Flavors, and Incense and Sensibility. The books are about the members of the Raji family, descendants of royalty who have left India and settled in San Francisco. Each book centers on a different family member. They are only very loosely based on the Austen books. Although Dev introduces some serious issues, the tone is generally light and humorous, and you're almost guaranteed to close the book feeling good. In the Emma Project, Vansh Raji is a very wealthy, very handsome man who spends his time and family money trying to change the world for the better. He's good-natured, but has never encountered any obstacles to test that. Meanwhile, Nunya Kohli, who is working on a microfinance project for South Asian women, has just ended a 9-year fake relationship with Vansh's brother. She wants nothing to do with the Raji family. But her project and Vansh's project, which she calls the Emma Project, are on a collision course. The two are soon competing for funding and then falling in love. Sonali Dev has written many other books apart from this series. If you're looking for fun modern romance, her books are a good bet. On her website, she calls her books stories with a Bollywood beat. Okay, next we have Tracy Flick Can't Win by Tom Perrotta, coming out June 7th. Author and screenwriter Tom Perrotta has been entertaining us for over 20 years. Several of his best-selling novels have been adapted into critically acclaimed movies and television series. These include The Leftovers, Mrs. Fletcher, and Little Children. The main character of his forthcoming book was first introduced to readers in Perrotta's 1998 novel, Election, which was quickly made into a highly successful movie starring Reese Witherspoon and Matthew Broderick. In Tracy Flick Can't Win, Perrotta's former overachieving high school student is a single mother in her mid-40s, working as an assistant principal in a New Jersey high school. Although she is ever so slightly beaten down by life, when news breaks that the principal of her school is retiring, her old ambition flares up. The grown-up woman who had once dreamed of becoming president of the United States when she was young turns her attention to becoming principal of the school. Tracy Flick's schemes may turn out to be misguided, but she jumps in with gusto. She becomes involved in a plan to have a Hall of Fame for the high school. During the committee's search for worthy inductees, she is confronted with the memory of her own high school experience. And although she has been successful in stubbornly, persistently holding on to her own view of what happened, that's all bringing up a lot of it, and she may end up seeing things a little bit differently. While this novel will surely be funny, Perrotta's humor is undeniably dark. So you may be laughing, but you will also be cringing a little and maybe even a lot. My next book is Horse by Geraldine Brooks, scheduled to come out June 14th. Geraldine Brooks is a master of historical fiction. Her Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, March, takes the absent father in Louisa May Alcott's Little Women and follows his experiences in the Civil War. In her book, Year of Wonders, Brooks writes about a woman's struggle to survive during an outbreak of the bubonic plague in 1666. This new novel, Horse, has all the elements of a great historical novel. It has parallel timeframes with stories unfolding in the 1850s, the 1950s, and 2019. It has an old discarded painting that holds clues to a mystery. There is an actual skeleton in an attic. The themes of the story have relevance to the current issues of our day, and the whole thing is inspired by the true story of a famous 19th century racehorse. The story begins in the 1850s. An enslaved groom named Jarrett travels with a horse that had been trained by his father, and they go throughout the South winning races. They meet an itinerant artist who makes a living painting racehorses. The artist is just about to leave to take up arms to fight for the Union in the Civil War. Then in the 1950s timeframe, a New York City gallery owner is drawn to this equestrian oil painting, even though she can't really pin down where it came from. In 2019, an Australian Smithsonian scientist and a Nigerian American art historian find themselves both interested in the history of the same horse and learning about Black horsemen who were critical to the horse's great success. This looks perfect for readers who enjoy intertwining plots and a link to actual history. Okay, next is The Daughter of Dr. Moreau by Sylvia Moreno Garcia, and it'll come out July 19th. Sylvia Moreno Garcia has written several books, but she had a sort of breakout success in 2020 with Mexican Gothic. The book was described as Gothic horror and centered on a young woman who responds to a letter from a cousin who may be delusional or may be in actual danger with her new husband and his family in a crumbling old mansion. The story was strange and confusing, and readers couldn't look away. Mexican Gothic was a page-turning success. This latest book returns to the horror adjacent. It's a riff on The Island of Dr. Moreau, which is an H.G. Wells science fiction novel from 1896. In the original novel, the narrator is stranded on an island where a mad scientist / doctor has created human-animal hybrid creatures via surgery. This book is a retelling of The Island of Dr. Moreau, as if someone wondered who else lived on that island and did Dr. Moreau have any kids? Set in 19th century Mexico, the story is told from the point of view of Carlotta, Dr. Moreau's daughter, as the title suggests. Carlotta is a brilliant and beautiful young woman who has grown up in an odd environment. They live on a remote estate, and she lives with not only her father, but also Montgomery, who is a melancholy alcoholic caretaker who secretly pines for Carlotta. And they also live with all of the many hybrid creatures that are the results of her father's experiments. The estate and the created family are a haven from the political upheaval and violence that churns outside their walls. So it is almost like a utopian refuge. So things are weird, but they're stable. That is, until the son of the wealthy benefactor who made this whole thing possible shows up. The estate and the experiments are all funded by the Lizaldi family, and Eduardo is the handsome and spoiled son, and his arrival brings the turmoil of the outside world to the family. This is more psychological dread and slow building tension than fast-paced, shocking violence. One reviewer used the term cerebral atmospheric horror. Okay, my last book is Life on the Mississippi, an epic American adventure by Rinker Buck, and it should come out August 9th. And I'm irrationally excited about this book. You might recognize the title as being the same as Mark Twain's classic memoir published in 1883. That Life on the Mississippi is the one that we learned all the great stories about Mark Twain when he was a young man being a steamboat pilot on the Mississippi River before the Civil War. In the second half of that Life on the Mississippi, Twain recounts a trip down the Mississippi years later after the heyday of the steamboats had long passed. And he writes about how much things had changed, and it includes a lot of general history. This Life on the Mississippi is not about steamboats, but largely about the significance of flatboats in American history. Rinker Buck built an authentic wooden flatboat similar to those often seen on the Mississippi in the early 1800s. Think of the painting, The Jolly Flatboatman by George Caleb Bingham. A flatboat, it's basically almost like a glorified wooden raft, and it's for slow moving and wide. Buck named his craft, the craft that he built, Flatboat Patience, and then he set out on a journey from Pennsylvania to New Orleans on the Ohio and Mississippi rivers. So this is not Rinker Buck's first foray into this combination of immersive journalism and reality TV on the page. In 2015, he wrote The Oregon Trail, and that recounted a trip that he took with his brother, tracing the 2,000-mile historic trail in a covered wagon with a team of mules. As in the original Life on the Mississippi, there was a lot of American history mixed in, along with the exciting story of all the various mishaps that occur on a trip like this. Buck, like Twain, comments on the changes in the landscape and nature in recent years. This should talk a lot about our area and the Mississippi, and the importance of the Mississippi in the country, and I'm really looking forward to it. So that's it for me. I hope this is a good variety for everybody, no matter what your reading mood is. And I'll turn it back over to you, Sarah.
Thanks, Jennifer. So yeah, if this was not enough reading suggestions for you, or you want something, since these are all coming out in the future to read right now, please try out our personalized reading service. This is a form that you fill out on our website where you tell us what you like and you don't like, and you will receive a list of 5 titles created just for you. You can find it on our website under the Books, eMedia, and More tab. And then if you liked this virtual program, you might like a couple of upcoming virtual programs. Later this month, we have Spring Into a Good Book. This is another staff picks type program, kind of like this one, but it's going to be hosted by several of the book loving staff at the Saks branch, which is in Chesterfield. So if you are looking for some great spring reads, then definitely check out Spring Into a Good Book with the Saks branch staff. And then also later this month, we have an evening with the Kwansaba. So the Kwansaba is an African-American poetic form that was actually created first in East St. Louis by the East St. Louis Poet Laureate. This program was originally scheduled in February, and then we had a snow day, so it had to be canceled. So this is we're having it again in April, but that is actually another sort of appropriate month because April is National Poetry Month. So join us at one of these two events or one of the other great events that the library is hosting this month. So yeah, let's see if we have any questions. If the rest of our presenters want to go ahead and turn on your microphones and cameras, I will stop the share and put us into gallery mode. Yeah, okay.
I don't see any questions yet, Sarah, but I want all of you to order my books in the future. I'll just turn over my card number after the program.
I know, I totally wrote down.
Yeah, it's funny. I looked at all of your picks before, like, you know, when I had to like make up the handouts and everything, and I was like, oh, that looks good. That looks good. And also some of these Sarah Addison Allen is like my comfort author. I've read all of her books. When I'm feeling very stressed, I like to read what I call cozy fantasy, which is like heartwarming magical realism or contemporary fantasy. And like she's like the best of that genre. So I'm looking forward to other birds. And then I've read The Oregon Trail. I liked it a lot. It's very funny. In addition to being, you know, informative, but
yeah, he has a unique voice, I think. And so whatever story he's telling is going to be good.
Yeah, he and his brother too are a little salty. Is his brother with him? I wonder if his brother's with him on this one too.
I don't think so, but they talk about he has a crew. So yeah.
yeah, they're a little rough around the edges, those two.
Yes.
But
We do
yeah.
have two questions.
Okay,
Jennifer, I think this one is for you. It says, our book group picks titles for summer 2022 through spring 2023 soon. How do we know how many copies of these books will be available? We always check availability in the library.
That's a great question. You don't, but so because I don't always, because what happens is, so we make an initial order and then we make more orders based on how many requests are on there. And we love to accommodate book groups. And so if your book group is doing it and you're just a few books shy, I mean, you can just let us know and then maybe we can get some more. The problem is sometimes it takes a long time. But yeah, I can't really predict how many copies that will be available. I know in the catalog, the way it was, it used to just say one copy available. Now I don't know what it says right now. Sorry.
Doesn't say anything.
Helpful, but yeah, but you can, if you can just they know, you know, who does know is Customer Connect can figure it out how many copies we have on order, and then we always order more if there's holds. So
I want to
That's what I
jump
was
to a
gonna say,
related question which just came in. Is there a minimum purchase quantity?
there is 4,
Right, so
and that's
then
for
I'll
you
go-
too, right, Cindy?
That is correct. I also have 4 of everything.
I should mention though, so I know, so we just have a new shared catalog with St. Louis Public Library. So you will also see books that St. Louis Public Library owns as well in our new catalog. And their minimum purchase is 1. So they do sometimes purchase just 1 copy of a book. If it's like something that they really think, you know, a niche amount of people are going to want. But yeah, I mean, most of the time you're going to see 4 or even more because we may purchase some and then St. Louis Public will purchase some. So yeah, you're actually going to see probably larger available quantities than you used to. So
We have a question which would be another webinar. What is the best book you've ever read? It says.
Well, I mean, people are probably tired of hearing this if you attend a lot of these, but yeah, probably my favorite book of all time is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. And she actually has a new book that I think came out today or yesterday. I didn't put it on my list because like it like was launching a little bit too soon for me to put it on my list, but called Sea of Tranquility. But that's probably my favorite book. I have not seen the HBO series yet. But I don't know. That's my other, see, I said I like this sort of like cozy fantasy, but then my other sort of standard feeling, I like this sort of haunting feeling about things that don't exist anymore. So those are my two modes.
For me, there are probably two that are tied. One would be The Book Thief by Marcus Zuzak. That's one of those books that it had me by like the first paragraph. I was just like, this is the greatest thing ever written. And it just got better. I mean, anything that's narrated by death has got to be pretty extraordinary. And then the other one would be The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafran. I will say that story kind of came unraveled at the end, but the language before it became unraveled and just the characters. Both of those are books about books, so that probably says more about me than we really need to know. But both of those books were really powerful.
Jennifer.
All right. Well, so this is recency bias because I just reread this book, but Thornton Wilder's The Bridge of San Luis Rey is right up there. I just reread it, and when I closed it, I said, do I like this more than The Magic Mountain? Thomas Mann's The Magic Mountain, and I had to think about it. So I don't know, that might be the best. Harry?
I don't know if I have a best. I mean, I've read so many that I liked, so I don't know if I can give an answer. But I will ask, are all the books available as ebooks?
I would say
all
this.
of them are.
Yeah, if it is available in ebooks, we'll get it, is a safer statement than they're all available in ebooks, because we're lucky to have a large system where we can get a lot of the ebooks. And so depending on which format or whatever, we usually get most of anything we can. So.
And this next question is for Sarah specifically. It says, I want to start reading cozy mysteries. Sarah, can you suggest a good one to start with?
So I don't read a lot of mysteries. I do read a lot of what I call cozy fantasy, which is not a real genre. That's just the genre that I made up. It's like, yeah, but there is a real genre called cozy mysteries, and Harry might even be able to speak to this more because he runs the mystery book. But I do read cozy mysteries from time to time. And I think the last one that I read and really liked was The Secret Book and Scone Society by Ellery Adams. It's a series. And I did like this one. It has a little bit of magical realism in it too, which is like my kind of thing, you know, like the woman who makes scones, like the scones like solve your problems, if that makes sense. You know, like you go in and you tell her their problem and then she makes you a special scone, and so it's that kind of thing. So but also I do think this author has a very nice way of writing. It's like high quality writing for a cozy mystery, and she mentions a lot of other books in there because she runs a bookstore. So so that would be my suggestion. The Secret Book and Scone Society by Ellery Adams. Yeah,
there are a lot of good cozy mysteries. Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman is really good.
yeah.
And there's a series of books about murder on the bayou. I can't think of the author's name, but those are really good too. She's a former TV writer. Let's see, is there any buzz about the new Jennifer Egan book? Would it be good for a book group, or would you recommend any of her others?
I loved it. The new book, I thought it was really good. I think it would be good for a book group, but it's almost like the issues are so deep that your group might just be sitting around, so like, it's not issuey like, like human interaction. It's kind of like memories and thinking and stuff. So it may be too much, but I really liked Manhattan Beach by Jennifer Egan. And I didn't think that got as much attention as her other books, which I thought was weird because I thought it was great, but.
Okay. Jennifer, you're going to order 500 copies of the Tina Brown book, right? About the royal family.
I think I already ordered that, but I think 27 maybe.
Plenty.
I'm dying to read it.
Yeah.
I don't see any more questions, but feel free to put some more questions in. because I think we've covered all of them. Yeah, I know the Jodi Picoult book is going to be a huge hit.
That does sound good. And
I told you on Goodreads, they were hyperventilating about it. I mean, people who had gotten advanced copies of it were saying, please don't spoil it, but it's fabulous. Somebody posted that they really like the handouts and the page covers.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So I think I forgot to mention the handouts at the beginning, but I did send out handouts. If you registered before, like, say 1 p.m. today, you probably got a handout. If you click on the covers, it will take you to the catalog where you can place a hold. If you did not get that handout, because you signed up later, you just like didn't get it. I will be sending a follow-up email to this program tonight. I'll also link to the recording on YouTube, and I will, attach the handouts again. So thank you. I'm glad you like the handouts. It's always nice to have something in front of you to follow along with, I think, so you're not like frantically taking notes. Let's see. Oh, other cozy fantasy authors. Yeah, I'm trying to think of the. I'm looking things up in the catalog on my phone. That's what I'm doing when you're.
While you're doing that, I once again, I just want to recommend, though it's a young adult book, but I highly recommend it. It's called Bayou Magic by Cynthia Parker Rhodes. It is also magical realism, and it really it just transports you there to the bayou. It's a coming of age story about a young woman who goes to visit her grandmother and really feels kind of like left out, like outside of the family. And the grandmother basically says that we each bring our own gifts. It's really a beautiful book. I definitely call it a cozy fantasy now that I know that phrase.
Right. Now that Sarah's invented it.
It should be a thing. Yeah, so I don't know what it is about the name Allen, but another author that I like is Lisa Van Allen. She has several of these sort of, I don't know, they're like Sarah Addison Allen, and they're kind of like women's relationship fiction, but it has like aspects of magical realism and fantasy in it. I've read The Wishing Thread and The Night Garden. So I like both of those. And then sorry, I'm not very good at just like remembering people's names off of the, oh, okay. And then it must be something about three names, like 3 names, because another one I really like is The Dress Shop of Dreams by Mena Van Prague. This is one of those books where, like, this person runs a dress shop, and like the dress, I like these things where, like, someone has a problem, but someone owns a shop in which they sell or make things that like help you fix your problem. I don't know, it's just charming to me. And maybe because that's what I want in life, is to like just like go to the magic shop and find a solution, and hopefully that solution will be pretty or taste good. So wouldn't that be nice? Yeah.
That's
How often do we do these upcoming book presentations?
So from the beginning of the pandemic, this was actually 2 years ago in May of 2020, Lit Lovers was our very first webinar style virtual program. So thank you to Jennifer and Cindy for like being our guinea pigs when we first launched this. And since then, we've done more or less about 1 a month. However, this year we pulled back a little bit, mostly because Harry and I are the ones that tend to organize these. And we have had a lot of like behind the scenes things that we have had to do with our transition to the new catalog and a move to a new building. So we've done just, I think, 2 or 3 I think so far this year, but we will have some more coming up. We're going to have one in June and July, for one for Juneteenth and one for Summer Reading Club, and we'll probably have another couple in the fall. So so we have been having them about once a month, but I think this year we're going to have them like maybe every other month or so. So
This one's for Cindy. What were the other Native American stories you mentioned when you were talking about Shudder?
Okay, so Tony Hillerman has a very long series. It has two main protagonists, Jim Chi and Lee Porn. They're really incredible, and he does amazing things where he brings in the culture along with everything. So that's Tony Hillerman. He's, like I said, it's a very long series, and his daughter has now continued it now that he's passed away. The one from last year, which, like I said, just blew my socks off, and I highly recommend it in audio, is called The Firekeeper's Daughter. Firekeepers being one word. It is by Angeline Boulay, Boulley, I believe. Like I said, it's about a tribe called the Anishinaabe, and it takes place in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. It won a whole bunch of awards, especially not just for about thrillers, but about like debut authors and for the audio, but it's really great. The Firekeeper's Daughter, I can't highly recommend that enough. And then the other one that's more, it's kind of like a post-apocalyptic thing where the Navajo Nation is kind of separated from the rest of the United States because bad things have happened. But in there, a young woman has to fight off all these mythological creatures from the Navajo culture. And it's fascinating. And so by Rebecca Roanhorse, the first one is called Trail of Lightning, and the second one is called Storm of Locusts. And that also, it's just, they're really powerful, intense stories. I loved all of those. So. Great.
Oh, and one of our listeners has a cozy mystery recommendation, which is the Hamish Macbeth series by MC Beaton. Yeah, I mean, MC Beaton is like the pinnacle of cozy mystery. There's a lot there. So
then Agatha Christie.
Yeah. Well, I think that's about it. We've kind of wrapped it up here. So thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. Happy National Library Week. And we hope to see you again soon. And like I said, I'll send out a follow-up email and reattach the handouts if you didn't get them the first time. But everyone have a lovely evening and happy reading. And thank you so much again to Cindy and Jennifer for presenting with us tonight.
Our pleasure.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.